the Diocese of New Ulm. The faith was first planted here through the preaching of pioneer priests. It came of age with the formation of the diocese in 1957 and carries on today through the devotion and commitment of priests, religious, and lay people. This is the story of the Catholic Dioceses of America, the story of their past and the story of today, the local expression of the universal church. It's also the story of each diocese's mother church, the Cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be a disciple in America. "90 miles southwest of the Twin Cities, situated on the banks of the Minnesota and the Cottonwood Rivers, is the town of New Ulm, sea city of the Diocese of New Ulm."
The Diocese of New Ulm was established in 1957 from territory carved from the Archdiocese of Minneapolis-St. Paul. But the Catholic presence in the region stretches all the way back to the mid-1800s. The strong German presence in the Diocese of New Ulm dates back to the earliest settlers in the region. The city of New Ulm was established by the German Land Company of Chicago, which was an effort to recruit settlers to the region.
Many of the German immigrants who are fleeing the revolution of 1848 in what is now Germany are in Chicago, and they're really looking for a way to create a free town in many ways. So they've taken these ideas that become known as the Turner School, which is very focused on physical fitness and gymnastics as a way of becoming a better individual, a better community. If one is outwardly healthy, then the society will be a healthy, productive society as well. So in a sense, when they come out to New Ulm, they create almost what is like a socialist utopian community. Very atheistic in nature, very insular, but at the same time very deeply rooted in the ideals of their politics, their physicality, and their social sensibility. That was being suppressed when they were in Germany.
Catholic presence in New Ulm can trace its beginnings to the great Jesuit missionary priest, Father Franz Weniger. Father Weniger is from Austria. He's a doctor of theology, and prior to coming to the United States, he taught theology, history, and Hebrew at the University of Innsbruck. But due to the disruptions caused by the Revolution of 1848, Weniger decides to leave his academic career behind for a life as a missionary priest in the American frontier. During his 40 years of missionary activity in the United States, he visits almost every state in the Union. He preaches in English, French, and German. In the year 1854 alone, he delivers nearly 1,000 sermons. And in 1864, he preaches about 45 missions. As early as 1856, Father Weniger ministers to the Catholic people in the New Ulm area, and by 1858, the Catholic population was large enough that the townspeople began the construction of a small wooden church at the north end of town. But before it's completed, a conflict breaks out between the United States and the Dakota peoples, the Dakota War of 1862. The city was attacked twice by the Dakota warriors, and much of the town outside of the barricades was burned. This event provides a window into the tensions that existed in this part of the country in the middle half of the 19th century. But once the conflict ended, a new church was built, named in honor of the Holy Trinity. It was completed in 1870. But this church again would be destroyed, this time by natural causes. In 1881, a tornado destroyed the building. It takes nearly a decade before a new structure was built, the current Cathedral of the Holy Trinity. The cornerstone of the cathedral was laid down in 1890. The steeple and the interior decorations were added a few years later.
During the late 1800s, the region around New Ulm was served by a generation of pioneering priests. Among them, Father Alexander Berghold traveled to surrounding communities from his home base in New Ulm, and he was known as an institution builder, helping to plant parishes in the surrounding communities. He was also known as a man of the people and developed a very close rapport with many of the construction crews and the working men and the farmers who were the foundation of his flock in those newly established parishes. The Catholic Church played an important role in encouraging Catholic migration to Minnesota. Catholic population growth in the late 19th century was not always organic. In fact, it was part of a deliberate effort on church leaders to recruit Catholic settlers as part of colonization schemes in order to bring immigrant communities to the prairies in order to help populate the region and to populate the diocese. And for Bishop Ireland, who was the head of the Diocese of St. Paul and instrumental in guiding many of these early Catholic colonization efforts, it was also a way of providing a better life for Catholics. He was well aware of the urban squalor and the poverty that many Catholics faced in eastern cities. And so he wanted to recruit them to the prairies where they could enjoy a more healthy environment. He believed that Catholic colonization efforts would not only provide a better life for the Catholics who came from the nation's cities to populate the prairies and farming communities, but he also saw Catholic colonization efforts as a way to change the image of the Catholic Church in the United States.
John Ireland, who was Archbishop of St. Paul from about 1888 until his death in 1918, really begins to promote what is known as Americanism. And this is where Catholics generally saw themselves as outsiders in the U.S. It's easy to understand because they were treated very much in that way. But what Bishop Ireland begins to do is promote the fact that their allegiances are, while they are to the Pope in a spiritual sense, their allegiances first and foremost are to this country as American citizens. And what Bishop Ireland wanted to do was they wanted Catholic immigrants to blend into American society. One of the things that was important to recognize, the Archbishop felt, was that as Catholics, yes, we do have our allegiance to the Pope, but as Americans, that's where our allegiance lies here in this country. So part of the whole sensibility was immigrants needed to really blend into American society. And how are they going to do this? They should adapt American ways. They should learn the English language. They should become loyal voting citizens, advocates of public schools, and the use of English, not just at home, but also in their schoolwork and in their social interactions.
After years of being under the jurisdiction of the Archdiocese of St. Paul, New Ulm became a diocese of its own in 1957.
New Ulm's first bishop, Alphonse Schladweiler, was a descendant of German immigrants. He was well known for his love of music, running multiple choirs, and refurbishing his parish's organ. After only a couple years serving as pastor of the Church of St. Agnes and St. Paul, Schladweiler was asked to become the inaugural bishop of New Ulm. It was announced that the Church of the Holy Trinity was to become the new cathedral.
The German feel of the diocese is reflected in the church architecture, with Gothic spires rising above the prairie landscape. And many of those churches include ornate stained glass, much of it imported from Germany, particularly the stained glass studios in Munich and Bavaria. The German craftsmanship is also reflected in the carved high altars, the statuary, and the pews that all reflect this long-standing tradition of German woodworking that has helped to adorn and beautify the churches.
This is a neo-Romanesque Victorian building. It was influenced by Baroque sensibilities in the late 19th century. And so it has that sort of eclectic, Victorian, very American feeling of construction in the American Midwest from this period. It's very characteristic of that. And we see really quality sculpting of the woodwork in the liturgical furnishings, as well as the facade of the choir loft. The interior had originally a really robust liturgical artistry program, and much of that is retained today. We have reminders of the dedication of this church to the Holy Trinity throughout in really explicit ways, such as the Holy Trinity mural in the sanctuary. So we have Christ seated in victory in a throne. We have God the Father, as well as the Holy Spirit depicted as a dove. We have then also these trefoil-shaped medallions on the clear story up to the upper part of the nave with portraits in them. So there are very explicit ways in which the name of the church, Holy Trinity, is brought to our attention, the mural in the sanctuary, as well as more subtle thematic motifs. So the portrait medallions on the clear story of the nave are actually in trefoil form. The trefoil shape reminds us of how St. Patrick spoke about the Trinity, the three parts of the Godhead, all being one God in three persons. In the sanctuary, below the Holy Trinity mural, in the sort of middle register of the apse, are murals of the 12 apostles. And they really are a signal to us about discipleship, as well as the apostle of St. Peter that sits in the cathedra of the cathedral. So that line going right the way back to St. Peter, and then what each of us in our own discipleship is asked to do. The cathedral was renovated in 1987, and so as we're reading the building, you can read the historic elements, what was added to make it a cathedral, what was changed to accommodate the changes in the liturgy after Vatican II, and then what changes were made as things were painted or cleaned. And a cathedral is really a living building. It is an icon of the diocese, and it very much reflects how it is being used. And so we can really trace the history through reading the building.
The faith in the rich soil of New Ulm was planted by zealous missionaries decades ago, and it continues to bear much fruit today. Over 50,000 Catholics call this diocese home, and they take great pride in the faith that has sustained and inspired them for so many years, and that will continue to do so in the years ahead.